Hello guys, so let's texture it. Today we are going to be using Easy Texture Creator. I just released it this week and I'm going to show you how to use it. Okay. The reason I have created this is because I like to do most of the game in Blender, right? And I want to have something easy that allows me to maybe create something. No, I will not say like that crazy like you can do in Substance Painter, but something really cool and having the possibility of text and of doing that easily. Okay, so for that I created a node. I will show you how to use that. Okay, so I just created this object. It could be anything. It could be a Suzanne, it could be anything. Okay, it doesn't need to be unwrapped unless you want to bake it. Okay, so first of all you have to create a material, right? And let me see how it renders. I don't like to see just like that. I prefer to see like this. I will just get a light, point it here, give it some angle to it, and bring it something like this, so we can have some light source in here. Even put it a little bit more higher. Okay, so that's our material, right? So this is Easy Texture Creator. You drag and drop to your material and that's what you get. Okay, that's what you get. So you just need to connect color in base color, metallic in metallic, roughness in roughness, alpha in alpha, normal, and specular inside specular if you want. Okay, so then you have those options here, and those options is what is gonna bring your texture to life. Okay, let's go to the effects first. We have Easy Mask. If you scale up, you can see it's basically taking all the edges and creating a mask out of that edge. Okay, and you can noise it, right? You can scratch it, and you can use this as a frequency. Okay, something like that, right? So let's reduce it a little bit so we don't have that crazy edges. But you got the point, right? If you want to apply a texture here, you can do this by here. Okay, let's do that. Let's do that. Just to show you, and we can just copy this texture in the other slots just to show you as well how it will work. Okay, for that let's go and pick up some, I don't know, maybe a concrete, something like maybe this. Okay, if you go here, you can see your texture is already working. Okay, and you can scale down that here in your texture, right? Just as you want. Okay, I will leave it like that. So you understand how it works, this guy. So let's go to Leak Mask. Leak Mask, it's a mask that it's basically showing as if it was wet from the top, like rain, as if it was raining. It also adds some realism to your model, right? If you crank up your intensity, you may not see here right away because you have to play around with your Z effect, which is effect on the height of it. Okay, so you can tell by going up that you have some leakness going on here. You will see that in more detail if you activate the color of it. So it's this color. You also can apply a texture on it and you can give it a multiply. Okay, so and here you can extension down. Okay, extension down and up. Okay, and you can fade it down. You can play around with your settings and you can scale up, right? More or less what you want. You can increase the noise. You see there is a noise here. If you remove the noise, it will be just straight, but if you start to add a noise, it will become like something more random, and you can always, of course, go crazy. Okay, let's leave it, let's give it some noise to be something like this, maybe. Top effect means that right now it's affecting the top. By default is 1, but you can remove it so it's not affecting the top. Okay, so it basically takes all surface which is 90 degrees with the angle and kind of starts to affect it. You can also control how much it will affect it. And also, if you will have some noise affecting the top as well, right? Something like this. And you can control the scale of your noise just by doing this. That's maybe something that it gives you more release or not. The details, it's a matter of you, what you prefer, okay? Right now, so yeah, that's the leak, okay? Right now I'm gonna remove the color activate. The leak is still here, you just don't see because of the color of your object, okay? Let's change this color because it's gonna be hard to see the wetness effect, okay? So this is the diffuse 1, diffuse 2. You guys can see diffuse 1, diffuse 2, and blend between diffuse 1 and diffuse 2. In diffuse 1, as well as in diffuse 2, you have 2 different colors, and you can apply textures, you can play around with them, and you can even replace them for another color. So this gives you a range of blending, okay? And this is how you blend. This is all related to your mask, how you blend them, those materials here, okay? So right now, if you crank this up, then you start to see these 2 guys blending, okay? And this is overall controlling how this blend should work, okay? And here it's about also which mask is gonna take both masks, like in the middle are both. This one is just one mask, and this one is just the other mask, okay? So, and this is a kind of blending between both, okay? So now the leak intensity is too much. Let's reduce it so we will see just a little bit, just something like that, okay? And right, okay, so now we have some kind of texturing going on here in our diffuse 1, okay? So and of course I can replace by this color here. If I want to have just a tiny bit of that texturing, you see, I can just replace for this color here, and it will be replacing overall, but you still have some details on your texture, okay? Of course, that's cool, but let's go to diffuse 2, okay? Diffuse 2, you see nothing because right now we don't have anything that shows diffuse 2. What's gonna show diffuse 2 is blend between diffuse 2, 1 and 2, which you can control just by cranking up here the mask here, okay? So if you go this negative and this positive, you will start to see that edges more, that blending rush, more rough, not rush, more rough, okay? And you can play around with the contrast here, and also you can play around with the detail of your blending, okay? So you can give it more details on your blending, and also you can play around with the noise, of course, scaling up it more or less, okay, giving some fancy look, something like this, okay? And right now, that's it. It's basically diffuse 2 is the same as diffuse 1, right? What we can do here is kind of start to playing around with diffuse 2 as well, you know, having something interesting, right? Something like this, maybe, you know, it's up to you to crank up here and see how it looks like. Anyways, we are gonna play around with this more. Okay, so now you have blend diffuse 1 and diffuse 2. Of course, you have the settings here, and you have the paint factor. The paint factor, it's more specific. I'm going to that in the next videos, okay, because it's that's about painting the masks, adding your own painting. For example, if you think that's good but you like to have this guy mask in here, you can paint that mask here, okay, and I will show you how you can do that maybe in the end of the video. But if it gets too long, I'm going to the other video showing you that, okay. And also intermediate color is the color that's going to be affecting more or less the edges between the masks, okay, between diffuse 1 and diffuse 2. And you can see this by doing here, okay. So this means that it's taking in account this area, which is the area that is more blending between both, and adding an extra texture. And you can add this extra texture here, okay, to get some nice better effect. Okay, right now I'm gonna leave it like this, okay, but I want to add something on our diffuse 2 right now, which is gonna be some brick, okay, and I'm gonna add this brick down here, okay, and I'm going here and look for this brick, maybe here in stone and tiles. I don't know what kind of brick I'm gonna find here. Maybe I would find something that is interesting. Maybe this guy. Okay, let's try this guy. Okay, let's do some of this. Okay, so now that's what's going on. And this affects here, this dirtiness, it's because it's taking the diffuse 1, which is black, and adding on top of it, okay. You can also just remove it and not leaving it too much, okay. With some dirtiness, and maybe something like this, I don't know, up to you, okay, up to you. So let's go now into normal. Normals is gonna play a big deal in this texture because right now we have no normals, and if you crank this guy up, okay, you will start to see something, but it's not that much strong, because you have the diffuse 1 strings and diffuse 2 strings, so you can control both independently, okay. Let's crank up this. You guys can see right away what's going on here, okay, in this guy here. And you can of course go into your diffuse 2 strings and also start to straighten up the bump of this guy, okay. So you can blur your textures, okay, in normal, but you also can blur your textures here, okay. Let's show in diffuse 2 what does that mean. You can blur, okay, your texture here, so you see that the texture is getting blurred, okay. More and more. You can tell by looking here, okay. You see that the texture is getting blurred, okay. Overall, it's getting blurred, okay. And the same you can do for diffuse 1. You can also blur it, okay, and leave it contrasting, okay. So you can also play around with the blur of your normals and inverting them if you want, okay. For example, right now let's crank up these normals. We see what's going on here, but we can of course blur this diffuse 2 texture and the normal, so it starts I don't know if you can see, but it starts to get not that rush. The effect is very subtle, okay? It's very, very subtle, right? You can also replace your diffuse bump, right? So if you replace it, so you can see you have no bumpness going on anymore. Because the reason you may want to replace that is because you may have a normal map and you want to apply your normal map on it, okay? Or an 8 map, right? A height map. So if you go here and look for the texture, I don't know if we have that for this guy. Maybe it's here somewhere. Okay, this is something like what I'm looking for now. So if we get this guy and you place this here, you see, we are kind of replacing the overall bump, which is taken from the texture, and now it's taken from this guy, okay? So that gives extra detail, okay, to your model. So right now, you can play around with your strengths, blur, replace, as I show you, okay, for diffuse 1, okay, diffuse 2 in the normal settings, right? But you also have those other options, which is invert. You can invert the normals, and you can bevel the edge, okay? You go here and you bevel the edge. This edge, I'm using like bevel in the edge to fake that you have some bevel on that, okay? But this is at the level of the material, and this may help you to get some highlights. I don't know if you guys can see. Let me maybe reduce the size of this light and bring this light more to something like this, okay? And the reason you are not seeing now is because we have no specular. Let's bring some specular to our scene, okay? Let's bring some specular. So now we have the specular going on, okay? Well, our map is very rough, but you can see here, right, how the edges, the bump edges are the bevel edges are maybe making a nice difference. You see how it looks like now? It's very rough, and here we can put it in 3. You see, it looks like everything is blending more, right? So maybe that's what you want. Let's reduce the specular again. The specular is taking the whole texture as a specular, okay? If that's what you want, putting the specular here, okay? So you have these options. You have also the options of rust the edges. So what is rust the edges? Is taking these edges and rusting it. For example, if you choose to apply this, you don't see that much because you are not giving emphasis to it. You have to give it emphasis, and now you see you are seeing that your edges are being rusted on the bump level. Okay, let's reduce the strength of the bumps. Okay, so now you can see how it is affected. So you have your rust edges on and off, and you can control it here, and you also can control the scale of the noise on it, right? That's up to you, okay? So one thing that we forgot to mention was wetness, okay? Wetness. What is the wetness? The wetness is something that is coming from beneath and going up, okay? The reason for that is because sometimes you have some rocks and things that is on the water or on the ground, and you want to play around a little bit with dirtiness coming from the ground, or wetness coming from the water. I just call it wetness, okay? And the way you can see that is cranking up that on Z, and that's the color of your wetness. If you put it black, you can see more. You can also apply any texture here as you want, okay? And you can play around with the mask. You have a mask here, and you have a contrast, okay, and you have a fade, okay. You can play around with it and bring it down a little bit more, and now you have it something that it's very interesting coming from the ground, okay, some darkness coming from the ground up, okay. So that brings us back to our normal, because right now I want to talk about the wetness effect, okay. What is that wetness effect? This means that if you choose to affect the wetness, in the wetness you will not have any um, bump, okay. You can control it by affecting more or less. The reason for that is because when you have a surface and you have water touching it, the water suppress some layers of your object, and whatever you have in terms of minimal scale geometry on your object, the water should be on top of it, so it kind of fades a little bit, whatever you have in bumpness. And I will show you why that is important. It's the same here for the leak, okay. You have the leak and you see the bump is taking all over the whole leak, but if you choose to not do that, you see in the leak level the bumpness starts not having that much effect, okay. This leak looks a bit fake. Let's change it. Let's bring this noise scale a little bit higher, right? Noise scale a little bit more, something like maybe that, something like this, and we can play around with less of the intensity or something like that, okay. And we can go on the scale of it, maybe a little bit more, right? Okay, that's good for us, right? So the same thing here in your bump. You can affect the wetness and affect the leakness, okay. But you are gonna see this more in detail now because I'm gonna jump metallic. You have the same for the metallic. You have the same for roughness and for specular. Specular is because I just changed it here. It was like this by default. And metallic is like this. It's no metallic object, but if you want that to be metallic, you can control by this color, right? Put it all the way up. Now you have your object fully metallic. Or you can control by your texture. Bring this guy here, so it's kind of taking the texture and choose between the bright points and the darker points, and choose which is metallic out of it. Maybe that's not that accurate and that's not what you want, okay. So let's just put this guy here, bring it to black, so it's not metallic. There is nothing metallic on this material at all, okay. So you're gonna see the leak effects right now in the roughness, okay. If you start to bring the leak effect on here, you start to see, right, what's going on here, and you see how the bump affects it, because if you choose to not affecting it, your bump, you see it's affecting everything, like as if there was no difference from this area to this area. But if you choose to leak effect, your bump is softer here, so this brings more realism and it looks like it's wet, okay. And the same principle applies here down below. If you go to wetness effect, is the same thing, okay, just the same thing, right. Let's crank up the bump a little bit, but you can see that this area starts to look like it's more wet, okay, compared with the rest of your object, okay. It's all good, okay, but let's improve this contrast between these two objects here, okay? And we are gonna do that in blending between diffuse 1 and diffuse 2, okay? What you can do to make it look like more realistic right now, it's cranking this guy up and this guy down, so you will have not that much of a difference between these two guys, okay, here. And also inside normals there is this option which we didn't talk about, which is bump mask depth. So this basically is giving extra depth in between blending diffuse 1 and diffuse 2, okay. If you crank this guy up, you see right away that something is happening here, and something is happening here. It's giving up to this level of between these two different diffuse 1 and diffuse 2, an extra bump, okay. There's an extra bump on top of it, okay. And now you can go to your diffuse 1 and diffuse 2 and your blended details, and then you can crank this guy up more, so now you have more details, okay, on top of it. But that's still, it should have something going on here, maybe another texture, and then it comes with the intermediate factor, okay, which is this guy here, okay. So this guy here, it will bring, you can add, let's do that. Let's add another texture here, okay. Let's add another texture here, and we can go and choose something that look like cement but darker or something like that. I don't know how to explain that. Maybe maybe something like maybe something like this. Something like this, right? And you can go here, of course, and mix this guy up with multiplying this by something like this, okay? So now you have something going on that it's giving you extra details of your material, okay? So I would also play around a little bit more with not replacing that much the material here, so we will have a more older wall, okay, something maybe something like this, maybe, okay. So those are the basics for this function, okay, for this texture creator, right? You can do lots with it, okay. Let's increase the intensity of this leak. I want to see a little bit more, right? And I want to have less noisy and more top effect. I want to blend something between this and the noise, something between this and the noise, okay. And maybe play around with the scale of my noise, something maybe like this, okay. So right now we have these guys, okay, which is okay. I want even to push this fading down of the leaf, the leak a little bit more, and bring this guy down a little bit more, so we will have this affecting more. Reduce the scale a little bit, okay. Bring it something like this, maybe. Up to you guys, up to you, okay. So how we can manage to add more details to this object? I will show you in the next video how you can use your paint texture 1, paint texture 2, yeah, and how you can play around with those, and how you can use blend painting on between diffuse 1 and diffuse 2. All of these can bring you an extra detail, overall detail, okay? And I will do that in another video, otherwise this video will be too long, okay? And yeah, that's it. That's how easy texture works, okay? I hope you guys like it, and if you guys like it and want to check it out, just go to my link on the description, the video description, and check it out it. And I'll see you soon. But before we do that, I would like to show you something. What will be that? You can play around more with the normals, right? And get more out of what you have here. You can, for example, strengthen diffuse 1 more, right? So you will get more details on your diffuse 1. You can crank it up, your diffuse 2, right? Giving it to extra bump on it or something. You can also go to your diffuse, blend between diffuse 1 and diffuse intermediate color, which is this guy here, and bring it down a little bit and play around with your diffuse more, something like this, okay? And okay, that's what I want to show you, is just this little detail here, ambient occlusion. You can add extra ambient occlusion to your object, okay? And you can play around with the distance here, okay? So you have something that it look like it's more occluded, okay? For example, if you just give it an inset and give it an E extrusion, okay, down here, right? If you remove extra AO, you see more of what's going on inside, but if you give it extra EO, you see more ambient occlusion, if that's what you like the most, okay? Right now I have my daylight here, and I can just rotate it to see how the sun behaves with this texture. I think it looks good, right? It looks nice. You can, now you are seeing under the sun, you may want to go here and reduce a little bit the normal of your maybe diffuse 1, which is the brick, okay, and leave below the rest, right? I think it's pretty cool. Let me know, guys, what you think, okay? The link below, and stay tuned on the next videos. Then I will show you extra details of how you can get even this to another level using the paint, okay? I'll see you guys soon. Bye bye.